So this video is going to talk a little bit about one of the major parts of the portfolio, which are the artifact reflections. So if you look on the screen here, you will notice the Portfolio Handbook's table of contents. So when you think about your portfolio, there's really three major parts. So the first part is the in-task standard descriptions. And so we have started looking at those in class. You may have written some already. And so that's one of the major parts. Another major part are the artifacts themselves. So the things that you pick to put into your portfolio. So it could be a lesson plan you create, it could be an essay you write, it could be a project, something like that. So those actual materials themselves. And then the third part are the reflections about those particular artifacts or things that you completed. So the papers or the projects or lesson plans that you wrote. So if you scroll down to page 3 of your portfolio, your handbook, you'll remember that the portfolio is organized into 4 major categories. And so in each category of your portfolio, so there's one for the learner and learning, one for content knowledge, one for instructional practice, one for professional responsibility, you're going to have 4 artifacts. So that's a total of 16. So going down a little bit further, we'll go down to page, let's see. Here we go. This is page 9. So this has a little bit of information about artifacts and artifact explanations or reflections. So for the first 3 courses, the ones in 10th and 11th grade, I'm going to select specific things that we will put into the portfolio. And then during your 12th grade year, there are a few things I'll pick, and then the remaining things will be things that you do at your internship. So the items that are listed here are just some potential ideas for things that you might include over the course of the 3 years in the program. So when you're thinking about artifacts, what should go in there, you want it to be work that really shows what you have learned or what you can do with different skills that you've learned. And you always want that material to be your best work. So things that have been revised, things that have been fixed, things that really show off your skills. And so everything that you guys do, I will read and give you feedback on. And once I do that, if it's something that's going into the portfolio, that's something that you really need to take time to fix and make better. So that has to do with the artifacts themselves. So the other piece that goes with that are the reflections that you'll be doing. And so basically it's kind of like a 1 to 2 page reflection about a particular project that you completed, whether it was a trifold or a lesson plan or an essay that you wrote or something like that. So there are several pages down in the 30s, and we'll go down there and look at those, that will help you to prepare and write your artifact reflections. So down on, let's see, page 37, starting on page 37, are some examples of different artifact reflections. And you'll notice, for instance, here's the first one. This happens to be an example of an artifact that was written for an artifact from a student's internship. So it's a couple paragraphs long, about 2 pages. Here's another one. This happens to be another one about something the student did an internship. It's a little bit shorter, 3 paragraphs. And then here's a third one, a third example. So what you'll notice about these is that they all begin with the same kind of heading. So what goes in the heading is the title of the section or the category. So in this case, it's learner and learning right there. So that's the category that it's going in. The artifact number. So that is the which of the 4 artifacts for this particular category. So this happened to be artifact 1. and then the actual name of the artifact itself that is being included. So that way, as you know, your evaluators are reading through your portfolio, or as I'm reading through your portfolio, I can go in and see, okay, here's the artifact for this section, here's what it's called, and then here's some information about that particular artifact. So that's how the beginning of the page always goes for the artifact reflections. Now if you go down a little bit further onto page 40, there's the rubric for how they get graded, and so there's a couple different parts that I'm looking for. A basic introduction, and I'll explain what consists of that. Connection to the in-task standards, a reflection piece, and then just general grammar and mechanics. So to help you write your various reflections, there are artifact reflection organizers. Sometimes I'll have you fill them out. Sometimes I will fill them out ahead of time for you, and I will give them to you and to help you write your essay. So there are blank copies on the wall by the door, the front classroom door. There's little plastic trays on the wall, so there are blank copies in there, so you can get them if you need them. You don't have to use the one that's in your folder. But this sort of helps you to determine what's going to go in a particular reflection. So you start with the category, so you know which one it is, what the name of the artifact is, and then which of the in-task standards this particular artifact fits with. Because the whole purpose of the portfolio is to explain how or show rather how you can meet these 10 standards. And so all of your work throughout the program will illustrate your ability to do that. And so the way that you show that too is through your reflection and description of the activities and things that you've done, and you explain how they fit with one or more of the principles that we are going to be studying. So this breaks down what goes in each part of the reflection. So the first paragraph is always going to be your introduction. So that's paragraph number 1. And paragraph number 1 is going to have certain things in it. So it's always going to start out with what is it? So whatever that particular thing is that's in your artifact, what's included, so what materials or things are you providing for the audience to look at, a summary of what you had to do for that particular activity, whatever it was, and a statement indicating which particular in-task standard or standards it fits with. And so that's your introduction. Now after that, you have body paragraphs. You might have one or more. It just depends on how many standards your particular your particular artifact meets for your portfolio. So one body paragraph per standard. So if you have, let's say you have one that meets, just one standard, then you only have one body paragraph. But there is another section here it is, body paragraph 2. If you happen to have it meeting another in-task standard. So if it only meets one, then you only have one of these body paragraph sections to fill out. Alright, so in your body paragraph, you're always going to start with the topic sentence that indicates the standard being addressed and how the artifact fits that standard. And so you'll want to refer back to the terminology from the specific standards earlier in this guide. So for this piece here, this is talking about looking back at the in-task standard descriptions on pages, here they are. It starts on page 17. So these particular bullet points, depending on whatever standard you happen to be talking about. And so this is where you get the information about the standard for that particular part and how you make the connection between your artifact and the standard. So I'm going to go back to page 45 with the organizer. Okay. So you just indicate that. And then this bullet point here actually goes with this table. So you want to look for the different elements of that in-task standard from the earlier pages, and you would include them in this space here. And then you want to look back at your specific artifact and see what happens to meet that particular standard. So that's your body paragraphs. And then down here at the end, you have your conclusion. In your conclusion, it's a reflection, and that's an important word. So the whole idea of reflecting is for you to think back about what you've done, what you've learned, and what you could do better. And so this one is really, you know, where you're really thinking about all the stuff that you've done with this particular artifact and what it is that you really liked about what you did or what you think you did well. So in general, I usually tell students to talk about a couple of different things. So the first thing would be, I'll type them here for you, would be, what did you learn? The second thing would be, what did you like or do well? And the third would be, what could you do better or improve on this particular artifact that you're writing about? So that's what goes into your conclusion. Okay, so that's how you write these artifact reflections. Now I'm going to show you an example of a completed one and sort of to help you figure out how to do this. And usually this is the first one that you write as a part of the program. All right, so you will see on the screen, you'll see a snapshot of one that I've written. And this one happens to be for the teacher career plan, which is something that we write in the 10th grade year. So this artifact goes into the professional responsibility category. It is, the teacher career plan is the name of the artifact, and the principle that it meets, the standard that it meets, happens to be in task number 9, so that it's indicated right there. So in my introduction, I'm going to state what is it. It's a teacher career plan outlining goals for obtaining a teaching job. What is included, the essay itself, and then I would summarize what I had to do for this plan, because a person reading about, you know, this artifact has no idea about the projects and things that we do. So they need a little bit of explanation in the introduction. So to summarize what we did, we wrote an essay that describes the demands of a teacher, why I feel I can meet those demands, college programs I'm interested in, the place I am most interested in teaching, and my future prospects. And then the statement indicating the in-task standard address is just this one word for word. Preparation of this essay demonstrates my proficiency in in-task standard 9. And so, depending on the artifact, eventually you would just change the number that you do. So, down here to get into the body paragraphs, you want to take an element from the in-task standard and connect it to the particular, this particular artifact. So if we go back to our portfolio handbook and we go up to in task 9, just scroll up there, a little too far. Okay, let's find there it is. There's in task 9. So we're looking at the major bullets. So we've got teachers should reflect on teaching practices and personal beliefs to build stronger relationships and create more relevant learning experiences. Teachers should uphold the expectations of the profession, including codes of ethics, professional standards, and relevant law policy. So what do we do? Which of those seems to be best fitting for this particular artifact? So I would say that it's this one, and so we can sort of vary how we want to describe that a little bit. So I adjusted it a little bit for our purposes. So you would say this particular artifact fits within task standard 9 because I analyzed and reflected on my prospects for becoming a teacher and identified professional growth opportunities. So this has to do with that whole idea of reflection and building more relevant learning experiences for you personally, because it's about your own learning as a teacher. How is it that you can become better? And so your teacher career plan happens to be a reflection on what you're going to do in order to achieve that goal of becoming a teacher. So we go back to the images. That's the end of the first page, so I'm going to exit out of that. And I'm going to bring up the other page, which is the back side. Okay. So remember that this part relates to, whoops, sorry about that. I lost it. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. You'll remember that this table goes with that bullet on the front. So here we took out some specific elements of the InTask standard. So what did you do? You reflected on characteristics and interest in the teaching profession. That's what you did, and that's related to the InTask standard itself. So the next thing you would want to do, and this is something that you have to do yourself. I can't help you with this piece because each of you are going to have something different. So over here, this is where you look at your artifact. So in this case, you're going to look at your plan and you're going to think, well, what are some things that I said about the teaching profession and my interests? So what were some of the characteristics that I highlighted as being things that I would need in order to do well? Or why do I think I would like to pursue teaching as a possible future career? So then the next element for this particular paragraph is that you identified opportunities for furthering your knowledge of the profession and obtaining a job. So there were some different ways that you did this. Actually, there were two. You talked about a college that you would be interested in going to and the program that they offer that appeals to you. And then you also talked about a potential place where you would like to work in the future. So over here, you would talk about that as your examples from your artifact that relate to these ideas. So that's the connection between the InTask standard and your actual artifact. And so this one just happens to have one body paragraph. And so then your third paragraph is going to be your reflection. And this is where you want to reflect on what you did while writing your teacher career plan. What did you learn about the teaching profession? What did you learn about what it takes to get a job? What might you do differently to pursue this plan? Would you change anything about your plan at this point? Do you think you might consider a different college or maybe a different county, maybe a different subject or grade level? So those are all things that you can talk about in your conclusion paragraph, which is really the reflection piece. So the last thing I'm going to mention about these particular things, the artifact reflections, are they can be written in first person because this is all about you and it's about the things that you've done and what you're writing and what you've learned. So it's perfectly okay to say I and to use first person for these.